Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing fine.
Good.
And this is a medical program today.
That's right.
We're going to talk about flu and influenza. And what I'm trying to do is get the politicians to do what we were told in medicine. First, do no harm to your patients. But sometimes the politicians, even when they're not involved with medical procedures, they don't follow that rule. They usually do a lot of harm before they even think about it. But this is serious. Everybody's talking about it. People have died from it. Yeah. There are thousands of cases. Could be very, very bad. There's been a lot of panicking. Just one example of what happened, they claimed that the stock market dropping the other day 600 points in one day was related to fear of what could happen with this coronavirus.
Yeah.
And that's a mixed bag because stock markets have other reasons for falling too. Sometimes they're looking for an excuse to make a correction. But anyway, as we speak, the stock market has tended to recover. And besides, the Fed was quick to appear on the scene and say, well, if there's some really major problems coming from an epidemic, a pandemic, we'll be around in case you need our help. But I don't know what they can do. There's so much money out there. I saw one article the other day. They have so much money in cash, and they don't want to loan it out because they have to pay somebody to take it, that they're just storing it. So it's totally out of control. But no, this has filled the news, the coronavirus, and because of the potential damage. There's a lot of panicking going on, a lot of misunderstanding. It gets involved in politics. They say, well, it's much worse than being reported. Because the Chinese are suffering and they're lying to us. You know, all of a sudden there's this political thing. And others would say, and there's a few of the holistic type doctors on Lou's site that said, maybe it's not so bad. And they give some statistics. And I think it's important to talk about. But I think the panic is too much. I don't think panicking is going to help in any way. And you know what it reminds me of? I've told others this story, and I know you know the story, is that I was elected to Congress the first time in 1976 in a special election. Mm-hmm. Within the first week, my ability to stick to my guns about what I had been campaigning on came up. There was this scare, swine flu epidemic. We have to do something. And Ford was president, and he was in a tight race, and he had to do something. So he had to be proactive. So he declared an emergency and said everybody has to be inoculated. So they got the appropriations just like this, $137 million or something. But I thought, well, we're not supposed to be involved in this, and who knows whether we really need it, this sort of thing. So I voted against it. It was a lonely vote, but I did have another person vote with me, Larry McDonald, another doctor. Yeah. And it proved to be a good vote because the scare was way overblown. And then it ended up that more people died from the vaccine than they did from the
from the flu.
From the flu.
Gee.
So, but they spent all this money, but they had a complication from it. It was a very serious complication from the shots.
From the vaccine.
From the vaccine. Over 500 cases of Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a very, very dangerous disease because you can get total paralysis from it. And they knew it came from the vaccine. The vaccine was rushed through for political reasons, and they didn't kill the vaccine. There's two ways you can get inoculations, a live vaccine or an attenuated vaccine. The attenuated ones is you just doctor it up, but it still provides immunity, and it's not supposed to provide any diseases. But they said that was part of the problem. Anyway, it was a terrible fiasco, and I don't think anybody died from the flu, but they had, 500 people got that Guillain-Barré syndrome. And the whole thing is they inoculated, I think it was 25 million people. And by December, this started in July, August, by December, they had to throw in the towel. This was not good. And so they had to stop the whole thing. So that was a lesson I knew as I went into Congress. But anytime something like this comes up, I sort of am skeptical of the whole thing. The first skepticism is when you do have a major crisis, is it going to be 100% responsibility of the government to inoculate everybody? And can some of these problems be solved in a voluntary manner? Are there such things as quarantines done voluntarily? Right now, some of the quarantines are going on right now, even though Trump put a mandatory vaccine on some, or mandatory quarantine on it. There's been a lot of voluntary stuff, like airlines, stop hauling people around. So there are these answers. But right now, if you compare how much fear there is and compare it to some other things, and I'll go into those details in a little bit, but flu is a lot more dangerous than any hint of what of coronavirus might do.
That's interesting. And there's a really good lesson on panic that you have, because when people panic, what do? They turn to the government, and the government loves it. We see all the millions of people under mandatory quarantine in China. And if anyone thinks that the U.S. federal government wouldn't do the same thing, they're a little bit naive. Right. Governments love crises because it gives them more power. But here's just a couple of...
I don't think I know enough to make the prediction, but I'll tell you what I think. I don't think it's going to be anything like the panic reflects. I don't think it's going to be that way, but it remains. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be precautious, and most people are. Sometimes old-fashioned care and caution on where you go. If you really are worried, you stay at home for a while or something. But there's no reason why people shouldn't be cautious. There's no reason why people couldn't do the healthy things for themselves too. Yeah. Nutrition and rest and all these other things, which builds up your immunity.
Yeah, indeed.
You can be a criminal and go to jail if you don't inoculate your kids according to the records that the government puts down there and say that you will do this, 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 and this. And that, of course, is a real problem. That's epidemic, and a lot of people suffer the consequences.
Yeah.